Good afternoon. Happy Thursday. We are here at the Kids Book Bank with our Lunch and Learn with Constance Bohanon and Quartez Harris. And I'm Natalie Friedl, the Executive Director of the Kids Book Bank. We are so excited to have everyone on the call, and I will turn it over to Leslie to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Leslie Fitzsimmons. I'm the communications manager. Welcome, everybody.
But we are excited about our Books Like Me campaign, which kicked off on June 1st. And that's what the basis of this call is. And our first guest, Constance Bohanon, is so many things to so many people and a true literacy champion to the Kids Book Bank. We don't deserve her. She's amazing. She is serving on our 2026 Books Like Me campaign, and we're going to talk about that. But first, Constance, please tell our audience about your connection to the Kids Book Bank. I know it could be its own book filled with lots of emotions and a beautiful story, but we'd love for you to share that with our audience.
Yes. Originally, I did not know about the Kids Book Bank. I was a nanny at the time, and one of the parents asked me, would I like to come to the Kids Book Bank with Apollo to do a photo shoot for the Books Like Me campaign? And of course, I wanted to do that. So he had so much fun doing the photo shoot, and I remember me being nervous as a mom. It was his first little professional photo shoot. And he was being so silly, sticking out his tongue. He was not following directions, but we really, really followed the dress code. And so he got a lot of good shots. And he ended up being the little face of the Books Like Me campaign. And when we left, I remember saying, "You did so good." And he was like, "I know. I think I should start taking pictures like for people." And in my head, you have to tell your kids, like, "You did amazing," even if you felt they were a little crazy.
Mhm.
And he loved it. And from then on, I started learning more about the book bank and just how you guys are so amazing and just magic and all of the things you do for the community. And that's how I became a follower of the book bank. But shortly, a few years later, Apollo passed away in 2024. And honestly, I always tell my husband, you guys don't know how much you played a part in my healing journey
Mm.
and continuing his legacy, because I remember after his funeral, just sitting in my house saying, I want to continue his legacy. I want to, do something to honor him. He just has so much energy and love. And one of the things Apollo loved was literacy, books. That was our best bonding time between me and him. During COVID, I had nowhere to go. He had nowhere to go. And all we did was read books all day long. And I got so bored, like with just reading him so many books, that I turned his food into the books that we read that day. And I started posting it, showing people that I was turning his lunch into the very hungry caterpillar or pout pout fish and all these different things. And it went really viral. I was on like big social media platforms, on the news about it, and that just showed me like literacy and books play such a big part in kids' lives. And throughout that, I got him to eat some of the foods that he would never try, but he was just eating raw vegetables and different things because it was the shape of a character in a book.
Mm.
So I just truly, truly love literacy, and the book bank. We just connect so well. And when Apollo passed away, you guys gave him his first heavenly birthday.
Mm.
And that meant so much to me, to see everybody still celebrate him. Because when you lose a child, you wonder those things at first, like, will I still celebrate birthdays? Will it even matter? And, just having someone come swoop you up. Me and my husband, we needed love, and you guys loved on us. And now we're working on Apollo's Book Nook, which will be a space for children to come read and get to know who Apollo was and still celebrating his birthday this Saturday, June 11th, and celebrating his legacy, which I'm going to try to do until, I have no more time on this earth, is make books about him. So I am coming out with a book called Apollo's Golden Crown this Saturday, and I'm very excited about it.
And it's such an honor to have both you and Antonio a part of our family. I actually have two smiling faces at me right now of posters that'll be going up in the kids' book bank. And I remember myself walking in for the first time, and we have a picture, a poster in there, and there's different pictures or whatever, but Apollo just always jumped out at me. And on the rainiest days, I'd walk in and I'd be like, there's my son, there's my sunshine. Um, and so he'll always be bringing Sun here into the kids' book bank and love. And it will be wonderful to see all of the kids in the book nook loving reading as much as Apollo did. Which brings us to our next guest. I'd love to introduce our board member and best-selling author, Quartez Harris. He happens to be the co-chair of our Books Like Me campaign as well, with Judy Payne, who is the first executive director and co-founder of the Kids Book Bank and started the Multicultural Fund upon her retirement, which has transitioned into our Books Like Me appeal each year. And so Quartez, how did you connect with us? And why was fostering literacy and a love of reading so important to you?
I do want to say, before I answer that question, I do want to say, Constance, hearing your story about Apollo, it reminds me that we will always have our loved ones. And thank you for sharing his legacy and like so young to transition. But I kept thinking like, wow, like even a kid, even a child can leave behind a legacy. So I just want to like amplify that. And I love the story of how like a book evoked action, and you were able to sort of create something beyond a book. So I think that's just a beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. I see Apollo everywhere, and I never really got to fully hear the story. So I'm glad I was able to hear the story. Now that story lives in my heart. So thank you. Um, okay, so how did I get connected to the Kids Book Bank? My life is full of surprises. I always say I don't know what's going to happen, but I always suspect that something's on the horizon. And I was invited by, everything's a surprise to me. Me being on this call is a surprise, okay? And I remember I was invited to participate on a panel for, it's called the Middle Grade Festival through Cleveland Public Library. It's my Erica Marks invited me to be on the panel. I was sort of a little dumbfounded because I'm like, I don't have a middle grade book. Why am I? But I guess that just shows that but they knew I'm on contract to create one. So I suppose that was just them just recognize me as a young adult author before I became a young adult author. And I'm on this panel with some really cool people, and Jacqueline, former board member, was on the panel, and she has, her, she has like this electric energy, right? And she's like, you need to get connected to the Kids Book Bank. And I'm like, I see Kids Book Bank all the time because I know they have like a little booth where you can drop off books at my son's school in South Euclid. And I'm like, I can be a part of that? Possibly? What? That sounds too big. And of course, I was invited, and I got to meet a lot of lovely people, and they left me in the waiting room. I'm like, oh, they're about to kick me out before they're going to fire me before I get started. And then the door opened back up, and they're like, hey, you get to be a part of the Kids Book Bank. And it has been a joyous experience. They have been so kind to me. They have made me feel included. Though I'm always on the go, but they always find a way to sort of and weave me into their mission. And I'm doing the best I can to make the time to support their mission too. So yeah, and by the way, it's a flex to say, to be an author, to be a big part of a kids book bank. Come on now, like, I mean, perfect alignment, right? It's just it's good for the branding, okay? I just need to do more. But so growing up, you know, my mom, she had me at 16 years old. 16. And she was also sort of reckoning with her mom's mental health challenges. She wasn't mentally well. So she dropped out of school to not only attend to me, but also to be a caregiver for her mom. And the thing is, my mom, she was unabashed and she told me like, look, I dropped out of school to take care of you. But she never went back. She never got her GED, but she always went to books. Always went to books. And I have visual memories of my mom just constantly reading and also constantly writing, believe it or not. In fact, my mom had beautiful handwriting. And I suspect that I developed an affinity for writing through my mom's handwriting. You know what? Let me be very clear. I wanted to be late to school because I knew if I was late, my mom will write me a letter and I get to see my mom's handwriting. So the fact that I was drawn to her handwriting, I guess that translated to my interest in handwriting, right? So I tried to write my name and I wasn't really good at that. And I'll never forget. I remember in first grade having a hard time spelling my name. And oh, bless my teacher. I think it was a terrible idea. But she had everybody's name on a basketball, a laminated basketball, and the basketball was hung on the rim. So if you got to spell your name, your basketball got to hang on the rim. But of course, I was the only one who couldn't seem to know how to spell their name in first grade. My basketball was at the bottom of the court. And that was the first time I felt like my brain didn't work. I didn't feel like my brain functioned. I felt like I didn't have the right brain, right? But I do remember everyone cheering and because finally learned how to spell my name and I want everybody to go away. But that moment for me, it left a mark in my mind. And I was always sort of had this question of, ew, do I have the right brain? Does my brain work? And long story short, I moved to Columbus, Ohio. I have an IEP. And I never forget I moved to Columbus and I convinced my parents to let me move with my aunt because I was convinced that if I went to Columbus, my IEP wouldn't follow me. And apparently it did, but I didn't know that. And I was first time sitting in a regular standardized classroom, feeling normal, finally, for once. And I get a letter and it says, come meet your intervention specialist. And I'm like, absolutely not. And the letters kept coming. And I was sort of like, huh. I'm feeling a little comforted because he could have just embarrassed me and walked in the classroom and pulled me out of class because everybody knows Mr. Moore he wasn't the regular teacher. So I'm going to the class and the first thing I said is, look, junior year, I can't read, I can't write. And clearly he wasn't listening because he put me in a poetry class. And that was the first time it occurred to me. In fact, that was the first time I got an A on anything. Not to say I was writing good poems, but that was the first time it occurred to me that two words that you didn't think could live together could coexist and could live in the same house. And you can start pairing words that you didn't think that could come together. And I'm like, I don't got to make sense. I don't have to have a capital letter. I don't have to have a complete sentence. I can have a fragment. I don't have to. I can break sentences into lines. I don't have to have a paragraph. It was the first time I realized that words could be playthings. And then that's when the first time I decided, like, oh wait, my brain, after all, wasn't broken. It was actually evolving into a poem. So now I'm a poet, a best-selling poet. And if you hear that story, it makes sense when I say I can't believe that I'm a best-selling author. In fact, the very thing that I was afraid of, which was language, became the very best thing about me. You know, writing and reading was considered disabilities, but now there are my abilities. So that's my experience. And of course, I had to become a teacher, right? I mean, you go through school feeling wounded in school. It's like you have to become a teacher, right? And I'm like, um, I felt like I didn't fit in and I wanted kids to feel fit. I want kids to feel like they fit in school, even if they feel like if they're neurodivergent and they feel like they learn differently, right? So I was like, I'm determined to become a school teacher because I'm excited to support kids who are sensitive towards language. And I never forget my student. He came to me one day. He said, Mr. Harris, I cannot read. Flashback. I said that same thing to my intervention specialist. And I said, of course you can. What, you stumble over letters? You bumble over letters? That's reading. Everybody stumbles across a word they don't know. Nobody has mastered the English language. So that was sort of my legacy in school is like all the kids who struggle with reading, I convinced them that too is reading. That too is reading. So, and then short story, Of course, I have heroes. One of my heroes is James Baldwin, but there were no picture book biographies on James Baldwin. And I'm like, I gotta write one. I gotta do it. So I wrote this picture book about James Baldwin. And the funny story is, I'm about to wrap it up right here. Gordon C. James, he wrote a book called, he's the illustrator of my book. He wrote a best-selling book called, New York Times best-selling book called I Am Every Good Thing. And he also wrote an award-winning book called Crown. Mind you, before I had an agent, before it ever occurred to me that I would become a picture book writer, we were reading his books in class. In fact, we would read his books so often, my kids really begin to see themselves. I remember that if you open up the spread of the book, the jacket of the book, there's all these faces, all these black faces, and kids get to see themselves. It's almost like the book became a mirror. And now they're seeing themselves, and that's why they wanted me to keep reading the book again and again and again. My editor sent me a list of illustrators. Gordon was number one. I like glanced at all the others, but I'm like, that's my man. And I would never remember sitting in class and I'm sharing a photo of Gordon C. James. Like, should we go with him? And they're like, yeah. So it was a big, beautiful coming together. And that's my story.
And thank you, Cortez. I mean, so many things that you said jump out to me as a mom and as as the director of the book bank, as a former educator. There are so many things that we can do differently with our kids. And first and foremost, if you hadn't seen books, how would things have been different? And then now they're not only seeing you as a teacher, but as an author. And that leads me into our strategic plan, which is really to change how books change the narrative, right? Having books in the home really does change the lives of the kids that we're providing those books for. We know that reading can bring joy and connection, curiosity and opportunity, but before they can find that, they have to have the book. Just like you shared those books with those students. I love that. And how Constance shared them with Apollo. And then being able to see themselves in the stories they read is all about our Books Like Me campaign. Historically, widely published children's book lacked that diversity of character, experience, the authors, the illustrators, all of that. So with, in honoring Judy Payne, who was very adamant that we make sure that our books are populated with diversity, because only 4% of the books that we get in are representative of the kids that are getting them. And so we wanted to make sure. And so when we do these fundraisers, we do it with intention to purchase new books that are diverse, that can be sprinkled in. And the faces of our kids that get those books, they're very, very excited to get free books and to get ones that look like them. It makes a real difference. And so I'd like to hear from both of you how being an author of Books Like Me is important as we prioritize diversity in our selection, and how has being an author influenced those around you, whether it's children or adults, in terms of literacy? What kind of response do you get from people? Constance, you want to take that first?
Sure. Well, like I remember the first time, well, my first children's book was about my niece. She's 18 now, but I came out with it in 2016. And that book, I went to schools to read to children. The book is called The Adventures of Kimmy, and she had on this white superhero suit with a K. I sold her a suit when I had a book signing. She showed up in the prop. And I just remember her just being in awe, like, you wrote a book about me? You wrote a book. She was just so shocked to see herself on that cover, animated. And the little girls, I just remember the little girls saying, "Can you make me some of those furry boots?" And I want a suit like that, but can it have my name, my letter of my name on it? And so that was the first time where I just got like so much happiness in my heart to see that children really, like to see someone that represents them, and just to, feel powerful with that. It showed me that. And it was a lot of different things that just meant so much to me. I have friends who are all teachers, and Cortez, oh my God, his story just blew me away. But I have friends who are also teachers and sharing it with their class and sending me videos and different things like that. It just makes your heart melt. And like Cortez, I remember my kindergarten teacher. I'll never forget her. Her name was Miss Stone. I remember going into kindergarten and being so scared, sad, like separation anxiety. And I remember her sitting down and reading us a book, and it calmed my spirit so much. And I remember not knowing any of the alphabet letters, anything, not even the alphabet song, because my mother, she just didn't know to incorporate those things. She didn't. I had toys, but I didn't have books. And I remember Miss Stone just separately taking me, giving me more time and love. And I just remember by the first grade loving books, wanting to read them. Like when we would have to go down to the library at our school, I'm like, okay, yes, it's book time. And so just wanting books for gifts and different things like that. So it just really, really matters. It truly does. And like I said, with a parent and a child, it can be the best bonding time in the world. That's one of the things I cherish the most that I had with Paulo, reading books from when he was a baby in my belly. And just to still have all those books, having a book baby shower, because it was so important to me that he, had a different upbringing. So it definitely matters.
Yes. And you're pretty famous on social media. Apollo's mom's
7-Eleven,
7-Eleven.
Apollo's mom,
Yeah,
7-Eleven.
Apollo's mom 7-Eleven. Follow Constance. You'll really get to know Apollo. She does an amazing job of honoring him, and um, one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. She's always making something for someone, and putting a smile on people's faces. But certainly being an author is inspiring to so many coming up behind you, and we'll never truly know the impact that you'll have. And that's a great thing because it's going to keep going. And same with you, Cortez. How is being an author and going around, and how do the students respond to you now?
Well, one thing I do want to say, it's like when you hear like the echo of your own experiences reverberating across a page, it gives you so much life. And I'm gonna use a metaphor for a name. Have you ever read a book to a kid and you just substitute the character's name for that kid's name and you see how their face lights up? That's what we mean when we say books are a reflection. All books should be a reflection of all children, right? And I think about that all the time. Like if I'm trying to get my son's attention, I'll change the character's name. If it's like a book I'm reading, for example, I'm reading a book called Will's Race from Home by it's a Coretta Scott King Award winning book, which I was fortunate enough to go to that dinner by Joel Parker Rose, and it's about this little boy who his family. It's a generational story about sharecroppers, and they're trying to sort of race towards the west to sort of claim free land so they won't be sharecroppers anymore. And the dad and the son, they don't really have much of a bond, but during this sort of windy sort of journey, they are bonding and they're riding a horse, and it's a beautiful story. And I'm really into the story because really it's about a son and father. And the one way I got my son's attention is I said, Levi races home. And he's like, nuh-uh, nuh-uh. But that's how so again, kids bond with books when they feel like the characters are similar to them. When you read a book and you feel like it's you think you get to know the character, but you get to know yourself better, right? So I know for me, um, when I'm reading Go Tell It, I know a lot of kids that I interact with come from low income homes. So when I went back and I read in Glenville, which is where I used to teach, Michael R. White, formerly known as Michael R. White, a lot of my kids came from low income families, right? But Baldwin came from a low income family, but he was rich with language, you know, and I know that about my kids. Like they are rich with language when I read to them. And kids love to read books that reflect them. So I'm just happy that I get to read about a book loving, word collecting boy, who came from a low income community, and like his mom said, I didn't know James Baldwin become famous, but I know he had to read. And I want kids to know that they have to read. They need to read. And beyond just, trying to become successful, just reading is an antidote. It offers so much mental, emotional wellness, right? Like when I'm reading, it deregulates me. It regulates me, and it calms me. And in fact, I want kids to experience the effect that I had. And and I tell people my whole drive to write is really to soften a kid's heart, even as they get older. And I want kids to have an emotional world. And you can find that in a book. And it gets you really think about the more books you read, the more feelings you have. And I need kids to read because I want them to experience their full self, their full emotional self. So that's what I get
Right.
to do. I get to talk about reading.
It's so great. And you have so many tips. Like I feel like this is more of like I'm taking notes for myself as a parent and as a person. Absolutely the mental and emotional wellness. And as we teach kids to read by third grade and then they read to learn beyond that, and we know that it tends to the excitement of it, once you know how to do it, that kids don't always become avid readers. And there's things like sports and friends and things that um, technology that take kids away from reading. And I think that that's a pivotal point, to look at reading like a sport, and that it is something that you have to practice and you get better at, and
And
that
yeah.
really pays you at the end of the day,
And I
right?
do, and I do want to say something about the phone. I just read this open ed, and it changed my mind because also I read it changed my mind, right? And you mentioned power of 10 minutes is beneficial to a child. And this is not, and they have this whole campaign of reading is golden, right? And the whole campaign is like, look, books are not here to compete with smartphones, but it is an antidote to the constant mental toll that requires when you are scrolling. And it says you won't remember the next 10, 15 years a meme that you were sort of, you were giddy by, but you will remember a book that you read at a very young age. So yesterday I told my son, I said, look, you can be on your phone. You can visit your phone, but we're going to go outside in this backyard. I need 10 minutes minimum. Now, if you want to keep reading, do that, but just 10 minutes. So the power of not only just telling your kids to read, but reading beside them and giving them a minimum time, like read for 10 minutes. Just read for 10 minutes. If you want to read more, do that. But I'm going to keep reading for more than 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
he read for 30
Yeah,
minutes.
and Margaret has jumped off our call. Margaret with Dad's Storybook, and she talks about the role modeling males play in reading and just role modeling, period. Like if you're going to say 10 minutes, a lot of kids are like, okay, well then why don't you do it? So as adults, we definitely need to role model. And you reminded me somewhere in this call, some of the first books I got. My Aunt Debbie, I will give her credit. She ordered books from PBS for me from Sesame Street, and you could order them with my name as the character. And you had them too. Leslie, we have so many things like we grew up in the same life, I swear. But those books really excited me. I loved them. They were amazing. So I love all of this. And we are so grateful to have both of you. And we have so many wonderful local authors here in Cleveland. And being literacy role models is not only in terms of reading, but authorship and writing. And we know that reading is beyond the book, right? When we can read a room, we can read an expression, we can read documents and financials and health forms. Like it's so much more than just the books. And I don't think, at 6 or 8 years old, we realize the importance of being able to do all of those things as adults. So our Books Like Me campaign runs through July 31st. Our goal is $60,000, which will equate to 30,000 books. We purchase our books at about $2 a book. We've just recently exceeded 40,000 of our campaign, so we have just a little bit ways to go, but thanks for everyone who's already supported, and it really does happen because of our campaign committee and all the work that you guys have been putting in. It's a lot of books, and before we go, we would love to invite anybody on this call to become a bookend friend. Monthly donors of $10 gets a in-home library of 60 books for a child. So $120 a year does just that, gives a family an in-home library. I will turn it over to Leslie to wrap us up for today, and you can find ways to share the magic of the Kids Book Bank with others you know.
Thank you, Natalie. This just some housekeeping wrap up for everyone on the call. A great way to stay in touch with us is to follow us on social media, and we will be posting this video on social. So you can find that. It'll also be on our website if you want to share it with others or you want to watch it again. We would love to have anybody come volunteer with us. Also donate books. We accept books all year long. And right now our East versus West Book Drive Challenge is happening, where we pit the two sides of town against each other to see who can donate the most books in July. Books Like Me, we've talked about that a ton. So a great way to kind of maximize your donation is to either make a gift or a monthly gift like Natalie suggested, or you can also purchase new books, new diverse books to donate to us, and also give a little credit to your side of town if you're competitive. This Saturday, Constance mentioned, we're having our summer book bash honoring Apollo. So that event is here at the Kids Book Bank. It is free. Tons of activities, face painting, balloon twisting, the Cavs book bus, the Cavs dance team. Constance will be there, and we are unveiling Apollo's Book Nook on Saturday.
Thanks everyone for watching the call, and the Kids Book Bank story is to be continued, and we hope you'll be a part of it.
Thank you.